In this main lecture, we'll be discussing the measurement of behavior. If you think back to our definition of learning, a relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of experience, you'll see that in order to determine whether or not learning has occurred, you have to be able to measure behavior. So you measure the behavior before the experience and after the experience, and if that behavior has changed, you can conclude that learning has occurred. There are many different methods of measuring behavior, and so you will choose the method that is most appropriate for the behavior that you're measuring. The first of measurement we'll discuss is rate of response. This is the frequency of the behavior. How often does the behavior occur in a given period of time? Examples of this would be things like, how many cigarettes do you smoke in a day? So how frequently within a day do you show the behavior of smoking a cigarette? Another example of this would be checking Instagram. How many times per day do you check Instagram? So this is for when you want to increase or decrease the frequency of behavior. This is good for behaviors that are brief in duration and they have a clearly defined start and finish. So you can clearly see when the behavior starts and stops. That way you can count individual instances of the behavior. In one semester, I had a student who took the example of getting her hair done, and she was able to apply each of these ways of measuring behavior to the behavior of getting her hair done. So for rate of response, she says, I get my hair done twice a month. I want to decrease the frequency. I want to go down to once a month. So this will be an example of rate of response, how many times a month she gets her hair done. Next is intensity of response. So this is the force or the magnitude of the behavior, the strength of the behavior. This could be something like maybe you feel like you speak too softly and you want to learn to project. You want to increase the magnitude or the force of your voice. Or to take the opposite, maybe you think you talk too loudly and you want to make your voice softer. So again, you're changing the magnitude of your speaking volume. Maybe you want to sweat more during your workouts. You feel like your workouts are not intense enough. You want to raise the intensity, so you want to sweat more. For the example of getting her hair done, the student said that her hairdresser is too heavy-handed. She uses too much force when doing her hair. She wants her to do her hair more gently. So she wanted her hairstylist to decrease the force when getting her hair done. Duration is how long you spend showing a particular behavior. So how long the behavior is repeated or continuously performed. You would use this measure when you want to increase or decrease the amount of time you spend doing a particular behavior. So this could be something like, I want to decrease the amount of time I spend on Instagram. So think back to our example for rate of response. That example with Instagram was, I want to decrease the number of times a day I check Instagram, as opposed to duration is, I want to decrease the amount of time I spend on Instagram. So you're not concerned with how many times a day you go on Instagram. It's just how much time overall in a day do I spend on Instagram. For the hairdressing example, the student said, I would like to spend less time at the salon. I want to decrease the amount of time I spend at the salon. Speed is a measure that students sometimes get confused with duration. Speed is how quickly or slowly a behavior occurs. And one way to tell that you're dealing with speed instead of duration is you're talking about how quickly or slowly you get to some end point. So how long it takes to accomplish a particular task. So for example, duration would be something like, I want to increase the amount of time I spend running. Speed, I want to run a mile more quickly. So I want to decrease the amount of time it takes me to reach the end point of running a mile. To look at our picture here, you might want to have your child complete their homework more quickly. So I want them to reach the end point of having completed their homework more quickly. My student said she would like her hairstylist to finish her hair more quickly. So she wants her to reach that end, having the style completed in a shorter period of time. And again, the example for duration was, I want to spend less time at the salon, as opposed to I want her to do my hair or to finish my hair more quickly. Latency is the amount of time it takes for a behavior to begin. So this could be something like the amount of time it takes a player to leave the blocks after the starting pistol has been fired. It could be you want your child to start their homework more quickly after arriving home from school. You want your hairdresser to start styling your hair more quickly after you arrive at the salon. So it's how long it takes a behavior to begin. Okay, now interval recording is whether or not a behavior occurs during each interval within a series of continuous intervals. Now this means you would take some period of time. Let's say you are awake 16 hours a day. So you take that 16-hour time frame and you divide it into 1 hour increments. So continuous increments of 1 hour. With interval recording, you would record whether or not a particular behavior occurs in each one of those intervals. So you're not counting how many times the behavior occurs within the interval. You're just saying from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., does the behavior occur? Yes or no? From 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., does the behavior occur? Yes or no? And again, the time intervals have to be continuous. It doesn't have to be over the period of a whole day. It can be a part of the day. It can be over months. But the idea is that you're dividing whatever that period of time is into equal continuous increments. Could be a couple hours, could be 1 hour, could be several days, as long as you have equal increments that are continuous. Now, this type of measurement of behavior is good for behaviors that don't have a very clear beginning and end. So you take our picture here of somebody who has a headache. It's very difficult to say exactly when a headache starts and exactly when it ends. So because you can't tell exactly when it starts and exactly when it ends, it would be hard to do something like measuring duration. So to say exactly how long your headaches are, that would be something that would be difficult to measure. Because they don't have a clear beginning and end, it would be hard to measure frequency. So let's say you have a headache, it kind of goes away, and then a few hours later, you feel headache again. Well, is that just one occurrence of a headache? Is that two separate headaches? So that kind of behavior is difficult to measure the frequency of. With interval recording, let's say you divide your day up, you can say in each hour from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., did I have a headache at any point in that time? Yes or no? From 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., did I experience a headache at any point during that time? Um, so this is also good for behaviors that occur at such a high frequency that it will be hard to count individual instances. Let's say you are a prolific cursor, you use lots of curse words so many times in a day that you can't even count how many times, and you're trying to reduce the amount that you curse. You could take the whole month and divide it into 1 day intervals and say, this day, did I curse? Yes or no? The next day, did I curse? Yes or no? And that prevents you from having to count the individual instances of the behavior. For my student, this will be her taking her year and dividing it into 12 1-month intervals, and each month saying, did I get my hair done this month? Yes or no? Time sample recording. This measures whether a behavior occurs during each interval within a series of discontinuous intervals. So you think back to the last example, you had continuous intervals. This has discontinuous intervals. So let's say you want to measure your day, you could measure the behavior from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., measure the behavior again from noon to 1 o'clock, and then measure the behavior again from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. So the idea is that the intervals still still have to be equal size, but they can be discontinuous. They don't have to occur one after another. Take, for example, let's say a principal is doing teacher observations and they want to see whether or not the teacher has good classroom management. So they are going to see if disruptive behavior occurs during 3 time samples during the day. So the principal might drop into the class from 9 to 9:30, 1 to 1:30, and 2 to 2:30. So again, you're just doing time samples. You're taking little samples of time. And the advantage of this is it saves on time and money because it's more cost effective because you don't have to allot long period of time to collect observations. You can just do short time samples. My student example would be she takes her year and she sees from in the month of January did I get my hair done? In the month of September did I? In the month of December did I? So rather than having to measure the whole year, she could just sample those 3 months. And just like with the last example, you're just saying, did the behavior occur or not? You're not having to count the individual instances of the behavior. Topography. This is measuring the actual physical form of the behavior. How is the behavior performed? How does the behavior look? So this will be something like, I want to change my style of dress. So the actual physical form of the behavior, the way I dress, is changing. I would like to learn a new dance style. So the actual form of the dance that I'm doing is going to change. My student's example, I believe, was she wants to change her hairstyle. So she's changing the actual physical form of the style she's getting. And finally, number of errors. This is the measure of the number of mistakes made when responses can be classified as right or wrong. So in this case, the behavior has to be able to be classified as correct or incorrect. And so things like exams measure your number of errors. You want to reduce the number of errors you make on the exam. My student's example was she wants to decrease the number of times her stylist burns her while doing her hair. So if you think of burning somebody while doing their hair as a mistake, she wants to reduce the number of errors that her hairstylist makes each time she does her hair. So regardless of the method of behavior measurement you choose, you want to make sure that method is reliable. It should be stable, it should be consistent, it should be trustworthy. You should be able to trust the results that you get from that measure. So for example, if you were to step on your scale one time and it says 135, you step on the scale another time it says 150, you step on the scale again it says 142, you know that your scale is not reliable. You can't trust the results because every time you step on the scale, you're getting a different result. And so one way that we can measure the reliability of our ways of measuring behavior is to use inter-rater reliability. And that's saying if multiple people use this same measure to measure behavior, do they get the same result or very similar result? If they do get the same result, you know that the measure is reliable. So if 3 raters were to measure the amount of time you spend each week jogging, you would expect all 3 raters to get very close to the same time. The amount of time shouldn't differ more than several seconds. If they were to count the number of cigarettes you smoke in a day, they should get the same result. So if different people can perform the same measure and get the same result, you know that measure is reliable, can be trusted, you can believe that the results that you get are accurate.